Alright, so 13 and 14, so she gets into her predicament,
Well,
for lack of a better word.
I feel she's pretty anti-war. I mean, it's kind of sparse, like her description of how she feels about it, but based on her reactions towards, like, obviously being kidnapped and everything that has happened so far, although she enjoys going to the war and going to the parts affected by the war,
Yes, I don't think she enjoys the
she
war.
doesn't enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think even this alters her perspective even further. Like she
Right.
didn't like the war too much before,
Yeah,
but this
but
makes
now
it
she
even less.
even said this is evil. She never really realized, not that she didn't see evil before, but this is the first time it's really affected her
Personally.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it was one of the guys was saying that this was like his last
Yeah.
Yeah,
stint
like
he's done.
at the end of
in
chapter 2,
photojournalism.
didn't she? I mean 12, not
Yeah.
2.
Yeah,
When she
Steve
was talking to
says
that
he's
guy.
done. He
Yeah.
cannot be detained for a fourth time.
But didn't she also say that she was done to Susan?
Well, yeah, she's like, yeah,
I'm done.
I actually, yeah, she's like, all of a sudden she's like, you know what? I'm gonna be fat in 9 months after this.
Yeah. She's like,
Right.
we finally get to call what you
Like all
want.
of a sudden, her opinions altered about wanting to be
Yeah.
pregnant and getting out. Like she didn't want to do it anymore.
I think, regardless of where she is, like when she was in Iraq in the beginning and she had the awkward confrontation with the military men who swore at her after she was trying to expose the truth there.
Yeah.
And in Libya, I think it's a little bit of a different story because we in America think of Gaddafi as this like militant leader who really should be deposed of power because he doesn't treat his people fairly. But at the same time, you see the scenes where the Libyan soldiers were touching her all over, and the scenes where she got kidnapped and was zip tied, and her friend Anthony got zip tied so hard that he was crying in pain because he's so hunched over. So I think it's just a new perspective about the war. It's not even from like
It's
an American point of view, but just like from a humanitarian perspective of this is wrong to whomever it's happening to.
Yeah,
Right.
this is like another thing that you never hear about.
like, and yeah, I talked about how in one of my points that there's more turmoil than just in Afghanistan and Pakistan and Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah, kind of like we talk about with Africa.
Right, and like
no one
even
ever talks about Africa.
even though Gaddafi and what he's done has been on the news when it happened, like what, 4 years, 3-4 years ago? Was it?
This was
2001.
This was
Yeah.
Yeah.
You still didn't hear it to the same extent as what you would hear about Osama bin Laden or ISIS.
Yeah, it's all about what people like want to hear.
Like I remember in Polson when it was like one morning in 8th grade and we all looked on the television and said Osama bin Laden finally killed, and that's the topic of No EDZ Day, the book
Yeah.
over there. And like that's what I've been taught to feel about the war. So like that was like a success in my mind, but
And also, we were involved in Afghanistan and Pakistan. We weren't involved with Libya, so I feel like because we weren't involved, it's like, oh, why should we care? When really, just as humans, we should care
Yeah,
about.
that is a lot of it. So
what's going on.
again, it's what Americans want to hear. Americans only want to hear about what other
Yeah,
Americans
like how,
are doing.
it's like, oh, why does this affect us? Well, it affects us because we're all humans and nobody deserves to be treated like that.
I feel like her being captured in all of that and like having that point of view of like I'm done kind of also shows like she, not like in a good way, but like she, like the people she's been photographed have gone through this, like not with strangers but like
For
family members, like your husband.
their entire life, not just
Yeah,
10
not
years
just 6
span.
days of being captured. Like it's horrible, but like she's finally getting like, not like in a good way, but like she's feeling like what the people she's been photographing.
Yeah, not only does it give like us and whoever reads this book a different perspective on the war, it gives her a different perspective on the war, like you were saying. It's
Yeah.
like
her focus on the civilians I think is especially interesting. Like when she goes over like who's died in her time, she always focuses on like her drivers that have taken her places,
Yes.
like Mohammed, who
Yeah,
Risk
When?
his life to do, and then ended up dying.
they all risk their life to help her bring out the truth.
I feel it's like just hitting her now that all these people.
I thought
Helping
it
her
was
died for her.
interesting how the Libyan guy that was in charge of when they came back from being kidnapped saying, oh, you guys won't be beaten anymore, but you will still be blindfolded. How he was like, oh, were you raped? She's like, no, but I was groped and touched in all these places. Like, okay,
Oh,
thank
good.
God you weren't
Yeah,
raped. It's
as
like,
if that's
I had that point.
as if
As
that's
if-
any better.
yeah, like, essentially you were still sexually harassed. It just
Yeah, I think that
wasn't.
they still all fall under the same umbrella. And,
Yeah.
People just look at rape as if it's like the worst thing. Like it's bad, but like being like physically and like mentally like
Yes.
abused like that too is I feel equally as bad.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think I've definitely like acquired some of the anti-war sentiment just because before reading the book I didn't understand the impacts on the civilians.
Yeah.
Like even when Bruegel died in the chapter before, and then they went on like the revenge bombing, kind of like My Lai,
Yeah.
in Vietnam. It seems like it was such like a senseless action.
yeah. I think yesterday we talked about how that was a very Vietnam like move.
Yeah. Coming back to what you said about, or it was either you or I forget who it was, but you were talking about how it's mental and physical abuse. There's more to it than just being raped.
Yeah.
I was looking at the picture, and you can clearly see none of the photographers have evident bruising or scarring, and she even mentioned that. But you can tell on their faces they're just so drained, and
You don't have to like have
the picture's 300 if you wanna.
Yeah,
but like you can
Yeah.
tell like you're just great.
Right.
Ethan, do you have any opinions on the picture with them in the hands of the Turkish government?
No, but I can definitely see, like you said, the disappointment and like just. It's just a weird picture. Like there's a vibe to it that kind of gives off that just feels uncomfortable. Like really unfortunate what happened to them just because they are innocent. Really human.
Like,
That was,
you-
like it was really weird how when they were captured they were beaten and they got to like the end scene, AAA or whatever, and they were treated a lot better, which was like a very weird
Yeah, 'cause
contrast.
they were under the government there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but were they still under government control when they were kidnapped?
I think it said like
I think
he was
that
part
was,
of
that was
the-
more military.
It was like
Okay.
an extension of the American government or something.
Yeah, but then when they went to Tripoli, they were under the
Okay.
American government.
And you can tell in Adario's face. Is it Adario or
Lindsay.
One of
Lindsay?
them,
In Lindsay's face, that she's like, really, you're taking our picture?
Yeah, I feel like kind of looks like.
That's-
I mean,
that's
you
what
can like,
yeah.
she kind of has a similar face here, but it's just like.
I don't know if that's just her natural expression, but at
Like, I
least,
feel like her eyebrows are like
at least in this
Like,
picture, it's
are you
kind of
kidding
an
me?
expression of
I
almost
look like this?
disbelief.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's not really like anything that they want to remember long term.
That's probably a
So
lot of it.
I don't think that they want to remember the times where they were trapped in this embassy without knowing how long they would be there.
Yeah.
And I think the picture is purposefully blurry. Like it seems like
I was wondering.
Yeah,
even
I
the
was-
person who's taking the picture doesn't have a clear focus, and I think that just adds to the
disposable
emotional
camera.
impact of the
Yeah.
picture.
I don't know if that's just a coincidence or it was intentionally something like that.
I personally feel it was a coincidence, but it does still
Yeah.
add to the blur of everything.
There's like a new
Another
meaning.
thing to overanalyze.
Yeah. So you started touching upon how you feel more of an anti-war feeling towards it. I agree. I'm not really somebody that agrees with war, but I am pro-military. Like, I think war. You don't need a. You can have a military but not have a war, but you need
Yeah.
a military in a war. Yeah. And I think the service that the men do are fantastic, and just because they're in the military doesn't necessarily mean they're pro-war. They just feel like the need that they have to do it.
I feel like the military has a lot to do with patriotism. Like
Yeah.
we support the ideas that our country is founded upon, and therefore most of us support the military. But a lot of us don't support the war. Like I think we like the idea of a military and a just war, but in the end, a lot of times, just the civilian casualties negate any
Like the feeling that we're doing something.
argument for why the war is valid.
And like even just as you can see, the four journalists and photojournalists, they are kidnapped, even though they themselves are not in the military. They're not exactly part of the war, but they are still felt as a threat, and they are civilians, and they themselves are, kidnapped and killed. Like there have been several journalists that have been killed, and I just think that adds to my anti-war sentiment that you can't just kill somebody because you feel threatened by them.
Yeah, and as far as this particular war, this is, I haven't read much about it in the past. This is like the first, most of it I'm hearing of it. And it does add like a different perspective to it. It makes it sound just as bad as like Vietnam or World War II or other wars we've studied.
Yeah.
So even though we don't hear enough about this one, it's no better.
Yeah, I had to
others.
do a little research on exactly what like the Taliban was and everything to really fully understand what it was. Like I understood kind of who they were, but not too much in depth as to why they were doing what they were doing, and it helped understanding that.
With the Taliban, and I guess like Lindsay's specific experiences with the Taliban, it was interesting how we pointed out earlier how Harid came back after she was in the car crash, and I think that is like almost her way of saying like we're all human in the end, because I think like even though she definitely is not for what the Taliban's ideologies are, like I don't think she's in favor of their treatment of women especially, but I think it does go to show that like there are some central values to humanity, at least in her mind.
Yeah. Didn't she like say something? I forget what page it was, but like when they were at the embassy and like it was right after he was like, "Oh, good, you didn't get raped," and then the guy was like, "Do you need any like venom products or whatever?"
Yeah.
And then she even said something how like it was weird how like they were just talking about it and then they asked if they want like tampons or like whatever. I just thought that was kind of like I feel like in these chapters she's really realizing something. Like I personally haven't felt like a strong like anti-war from her or something. I feel like in the beginning she just wanted to like show the truth. Like I don't really think she had a connection too much to it. But like
I
now
would
she's
agree.
like
Yeah,
I
so,
definitely
even
agree.
so, she never really, at least in the beginning, talked about like if she actually liked the war or not. She was
Yeah.
just there to take pictures,
Right.
and
And
so people can see what's going
like
on.
you said about when like her driver's like Muhammad, she's growing connections with these people, and she's realizing just how
like a deeper meaning.
how much harm they are in just bringing them around, and I feel that adds also to her anti-war views.
I feel like she's like really grown up from like in the beginning. She's like, "Oh my gosh, you're pregnant! Like, why would you do that?"
And now,
she's like,
it's like
"I want to get
wow,
pregnant."
like getting pregnant can almost like take her not that she doesn't enjoy her job, but it will take her out of harm's way for a time
Gives
being.
her a life. I feel like outside of photography.
I kind of feel that is what she's going towards.
Yeah.
Now I think it's a break from this.
I think that connects to like her connections with other people, because obviously in her profession she's been able to connect with a lot of different people, but the person she has connected the most with, in my opinion, is Paul, her husband, because they got married
Yeah.
in the last chapter, and I think her decision to take time away from work for a little bit was her way of strengthening her connection with Paul, because after the deaths of Tim and Chris, I think she realized that these relationships that she has truly are fragile, and within any instant they can really go away. Like I don't think anyone thought that Tim would die in Libya after spending so much time in the Korengal Valley in Afghanistan, which she calls the most dangerous place in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel their deaths kind of made the war more real to her. Made her realize like just what she was doing, like what she, in like the dangerous situation she was in, and that like it could be Tim Chris, it was Tim Chris, it could be Paul next time, it could be any of Steve or Anthony.
And even though like
those guys.
she and Paul love each other, it's still like, and he's supportive of her work, there's still that disconnect that he's not in her life. And like you said, they're fragile. It can break at any moment.
Yeah, like you just feel like it's realizing like life is something like really precious, whether you like have a kid and like bring life into the world, or like one day she's got kidnapped and that could have been like the end. They could have killed her
Right. One of my things that I thought about was like the power of hope. How she even mentioned how just the hope of having everybody there gave her the hope, which helped them get through the 6 days of being tortured, and not necessarily always physically tortured, but mentally tortured. How it was like they would beat her and then they'd, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," and it's like, yeah, but and then the cycle will continue, and just I think it's amazing just how some spark of hope can make you just want to stay and not give up. And I feel like it's not just prevalent for her, but also
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
soldiers in the war that have been kidnapped, or even the civilians that are involved in the war. Just how, and it's almost and the civilians especially, the ability for them to find hope is very little, and somehow they find it because she and her friend, the fellow photojournalist, had the New York Times after her, and I thought it was interesting how she was skeptical of them actually wanting to find them.
Yeah.
But they still had that hope that they were going to be found.
Ethan, do you agree with the idea that Lindsay, although having these anti-war and pro-military ideas, does have this third idea of hope?
Yeah, I think that I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted because I'm actually not too sure.
You can say what you think. You don't have to agree with me or not.
I just lost my train of thought.
It is hard to compare, I feel.
I know.
Because when you think of war, you think of military. You need a military.
You can have a military without having a will, just
Yeah.
defend your country. We have the Coast Guard and stuff, which is technically part of the military.
Right.
And even though they're a Coast Guard, they still get weapons training and they know how to operate.
Yeah.
So I think it's alright.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like you have a military, so we go out looking for wars to fight in. I feel like that's unneeded.
The point of the military isn't exactly to fight in a war, it's to protect a country, and you don't need to have war to protect a country. Because there's always turmoil within a country.
I think sometimes America goes too much on the offensive when really we should be defending ideas instead of
Right.
promoting ideas.
That's been a recurring theme in the book.
Yeah.
I think it's always a good idea to promote these ideas of democracy, but the ways that we've tried to do it in the War on Terror, now that we have the 2016 viewpoint, seem to not connect with the cultures of these other societies.
Right, that democracy doesn't work in every single culture. It's impossible for it to work. And you can't just you can't just implement it somewhere and be okay, it's going to be amazing. There's going to be issues because these people have been living with almost basically no government or a tyrant for their entire lives, so it's going to be a big difference.
I think that is another testament to the big-headedness of the U.S. They feel that democracy works here and it's made us great and wonderful. It's
Yeah.
got to work everywhere else and they need it. And then we're
Just communism won't work here because we're such a large country.
yeah, it's the same idea. We've been on democracy forever, and then
Right.
someone trying to bring in communism.
But a smaller country like Cuba, it could work because they don't have 300 million people. They have, I don't know how many, but
Fewer than that.
probably 4 or 5 million, I'm guessing. But still, they don't have hundreds of millions of people.
I guess I would disagree a little bit because I feel a lot of the ideas of a democracy are connected to human rights in
Yeah.
some way. So I think with communism, at least in Cuba, with her original travels, she really witnessed the censorship of the press
Yes.
and Castro's attempts to influence his views on the people. When they had the picture of the family with Castro's portrait on the wall, they were watching Castro on television. So I think although I don't agree with America's decision to sometimes butt into scenarios where they're unwanted, I do think there is some justification for trying to make the world a better place. I don't think that's entirely false. I like the red.
Yeah, the red.
You guys are the only repeat colors.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely do agree with that. I think the ideals of communism, they would work in a smaller country rather than a larger country, but of course they're ideals. It doesn't always pan out that way. Just like democracy, the ideals of democracy
Hey guys,
obviously
take a
aren't
minute.
the same as
Write
what's actually
down,
happening now.
Write
No,
down the
definitely.
most discussed point in your group on any of the post-it